It's time to do business. Welcome to Business Incorporated. We have 25 minutes to give you updates from the world of business. I'm Amy John Mekwan. Here's what we have prepared for you. Surpassed 45 billion, but that's the gross, and this is the first time in 6 years. Congo has new export rules to keep tight grip on cobalt. And Ghana has launched $3.4 billion plan to become Africa's clean energy hub. You're welcome to the program. Let's start as usual from what's going on in the global oil space. Prices were steady, supported by stalled Ukraine peace talks, though gains were offset by expectations of a supply glut. The market is also assessing the impact rate cut that should happen on Wednesday. As also there's tensions with Venezuela, both of which could boost oil prices. So look at the numbers this afternoon. It's in the red for Brent, 0.72%, $63.29 a barrel. 0.77% in the red is what we have for WTI. Earlier today, we saw it hit $60, but it's gone down from there. It's now $59.62 a barrel. Prices were also boosted this week by the failure of U.S. talks in Moscow to achieve any significant breakthrough over the war in Ukraine, which could have included a deal to let Russian oil back into the market. Those factors kept prices supported despite a growing surplus. Saudi Arabia cuts its January Arab Light crude selling prices to Asia to the lowest level in 5 years amid oversupply. This is according to a document that has been made public. Away from oil now, gold prices rose today, driven by growing expectations of a U.S. interest rate cut that pressured the dollar ahead of a Federal Reserve policy meeting later on Wednesday. Spot gold we see is in the green, 0.3%. $4,209.43. U.S. gold is also up 0.1%, $4,239.40. Spot silver follows suit, 0.3% in the green, $58.43. Platinum is also green at 0.6%, $1,650.90. Palladium also is in that trend of a positive sentiment at $1,471.22. Data last week showed that U.S. consumer spending grew moderately in September, and that reflects a slowdown in economic momentum amid rising costs and weakness in the labor market, as private payrolls saw their steepest decline in over 2.5 years in November. According to CME's Fed Watch tool, markets are pricing in an 87% probability of a 25 basis points rate cut at the Fed's December 9 to 10 policy meeting, following the release of weak economic data and dovish remarks from several Fed officials. Here in Nigeria, the gross FX reserves have hit $45 billion level this month after sustaining its accretion for the 19th consecutive week. And this is according to latest data from the central bank. The increase in the country's external buffer, which follows the $184.88 million week-on-week rise, comes on the back of growing investor confidence, sustained forex inflow, lower dollar demand pressures, and improved stability in the FX market. However, the CBN Governor Olayemi Cardoso says that the FX reserves hit a near 7-year high of $46.7 billion as of November the 17th, and would provide more than 10 months of import cover in goods and services. Mr. Cardoso also mentioned earlier this month that diaspora remittances have surged by 66.7%, rising from $200 million monthly to about $600 million in recent months. At the same time, official report shows that Nigeria's net $9 billion. That's as at December the 5th. That's on Friday. Meanwhile, currency traders now expect the Naira to remain broadly stable over the near to medium term, driven by strong net FX liquidity position. Outside Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of Congo has introduced strict new export conditions for cobalt as the government moves to tighten its grip on the strategic mineral at the heart of global battery supply chains. The measures announced in a joint circular from the Mines and Finance Ministries require tighter documentation, prepayment of royalties, and enhanced regulatory oversight before any shipment can leave the country. The sudden changes have stalled export on settled miners and sparked fears of fresh supply shocks from the world's largest cobalt producer. Exporters must also prepay a 10% mining royalty on allocated quotas within 48 hours of filing origin and sales declarations and obtain a liberatory receipt before customs clearance. All mineral shipments must undergo physical inspections and be subject to multi-agency oversight, according to the circular. And Ghana has launched or unveiled a landmark $3.4 billion renewable energy program that's aimed at positioning the country as West Africa's leading clean energy hub, setting the stage for one of the region's most ambitious green power expansions. The initiative, announced by the government official, targets massive investments in solar, wind, battery storage, and grid upgrades as Accra accelerates its transition away from fossil fuels. According to the Energy Ministry, the multi-billion-dollar drive will fund large-scale solar parks, hybrid clean power systems for industrial zones, and rural electrification projects designed to boost energy access while reducing the country's carbon footprint. The plan also includes new incentives to attract private and foreign investors, with authorities positioning Ghana as a stable, business-friendly market for renewable energy developers. Algeria could see up to 3 new companies list on its stock market in 2026 as authorities push ahead with reforms aimed at deepening the country's underdeveloped capital market and attracting private sector investment. The prospect of fresh listings was confirmed by the nation's financial markets watchdog, which said that several firms are already preparing for initial public offerings in the coming year. According to the regulator, potential candidates include HiRaid, a technology company expected to raise funds for data center expansion, as well as INSAG Education Group, which is a private education provider exploring opportunities to access equity financing. And a third firm, described as a pharmaceutical laboratory, is also in discussions, though its name has not been disclosed. And, well, just before we head to the market, or let's follow up with the markets and see that the market opened in the green as the all share currently, that's talking about Nigeria's equity market, opened up 14 basis points. The market breadth largely positive at when this number is coming, which is about 11:30 before 12, with 22 gainers against 6 decliners. Some of the top gainers include Union Dicon, Caverton, Sovereign Insurance, Cornell PLC, and Jaiz Bank. On a sectoral basis, most sectors are in the positive zone, and banking retains that positive sentiment, as well as consumer goods. Insurance also up about 62 basis points, while industrial and oil and gas are trading flat at the moment. Nestle is currently the most traded stock by turnover, while trades worth 500 million. While UPDC charts, we see about 7.6 million units so far being traded. Let's see other markets right now for the African. From Africa, we see South Africa is on the flip side at this time. It's negative 0.83%. That's for intraday, and it's all shares at 111,554.30. For Egypt, it's positive 0.59%. Kenya is, however, or closed Friday deeply in the red, lost more than 1%, 1.37% at 179.58. In the Middle East, it's mostly negative at intraday. Dubai is positive 5,992 at 0.145%. Abu Dhabi is negative slightly, 0.03%, not so much. Saudi is also negative 0.16%, and Qatar is 0.08% in the red. Going to the United States, we know that investors there are holding their breath and waiting for a confirmation of the expectations of a 25 basis point cut, interest rate cut on Wednesday. But we see that for the Dow Jones, it's green, S&P green, NASDAQ also green in early trade. In Asia, markets traded mixed. Investors are waiting for fresh data from China. And we see China there. I guess the expectation is a positive one. So we see China's market there 0.18% in the green. Kospi, that South Korea is even more than 1%. Hang Seng, however, is on the flip side. And then looking at other markets, Shanghai is positive, while Nifty is on the flip side negative. Outbound shipments surge. That's shipments outside of Hong Kong. We see it surged 5.9% last month in US dollar terms from a year earlier. And Japan's benchmark, we see added that. All right, let's see what's here in Nigeria, what the Bank of Industry is doing with SMEs, small businesses. They should end up in the market, but only if they have the right funding. So I had a conversation with the divisional director of the Bank of Industry on especially working capital, which seem to be ignored in most cases, but of course is the blood, the lifeline of every business.
BOI itself is a government response to developing MSMEs in the industrial landscape of the country. The government also has tried to come up with several industrial policies to address the issues of MSMEs. Paramount amongst them is the issue of funding. If you take an Araka look at what MSMEs consider as challenge, you see that funding falls between the first two. And the response of that to the economy is that you provide access to affordable funding for MSMEs to be able to thrive. So yes, the government, through its policies and through the Bank of Industry, before 2025, our total book, or the total number of MSMEs in our book, were less than 3,000. But why I say the word adequate is that there has been an astronomical rise in that number this year. This year alone, we are able to disburse to over 6,000 MSMEs. And that is because of the focus. Sufficiently, or let me not use the word sufficient, but let me say that addressing some of the major issues that have to do with MSMEs' ability to access funding, and that is the issue of collateralization of their loan. So we've relaxed that to accommodate for personal guarantors, and that has widened the gap for that has closed the gap for MSMEs to be able to access funding. We've also secured the possibility of external guarantees from institutions. We've also tried to secure institutional guarantees from external credit granting agencies to assist in closing the gaps for MSMEs to be able to access funding also.
And still talking about funding, the issue of working capital, it's not very loud, yet it's a major one for existing and running businesses.
Working capital is the life of a business because it has to do with the day-to-day operation of that business. If a company is in operation and it does not have the required financing to be able to restock for production, that company is dead. So we cannot but emphasize the need of supporting MSMEs in the areas of working capital. We saw that lacuna, and in 2014, the Bank of Industry decided to start supporting MSMEs, and indeed all their projects, providing them with working capital, enable them purchase raw materials, and spare part to keep them operational.
So how exactly does this working capital work for the Bank of Industry?
Money by itself is not an end, but a means. So if the MSME, for instance, has to open source for his raw materials, then you have to make that fund available to him to be able to open source for his raw materials. But if it's such that his supply comes from organized private sector, from a known buyer, then what we do is that through his invoice, we are able to transfer the money to the supplier to supply him directly. Then upon confirmation, we make payment. Okay. For small businesses, what the bank has done is to dilute the collateral requirement. Most times the condition we talk about is collateral requirement. So what the bank has done is to dilute the collateral requirement to one single guarantor. And that guarantor must be someone that works with the government or a banker of level of banking officer, or you're a priest for a well-established. So what we did was to widen the the pool of people that can guarantee the MSME to access loan. So once you take away the physical collateral out of it, and the MSME cannot provide someone that knows him, to say, yes, I know this man, please meet his funding need, I believe he's going to repay. And that's all it takes now. And that has also created opportunity for most MSMEs now to access our funding.
Well, it's good to know that the small businesses are on the mind of the Bank of Industry, especially when it comes to working capital to keep the business running and producing. Let's take a short break now here in Business Incorporated. When we come back, we'll head to Berlin, see what's happening there. And of course, the crypto segment is still waiting for us. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Still watching Business Incorporated here on Channels Television. Let's head to Berlin now, where Chiponda Chimbelu is waiting to give us updates, among other things, from what investors or on what investors are doing. Hi, Chip. Good afternoon. Welcome to a new week.
Good afternoon, Ini.
So what's going on with investors over there?
Well, European stocks are opening the week a bit muted, and the Pan-European Stock 600 is actually flat. Now, the DAX is up 0.2%, and it is consumer-facing stocks which are offsetting the gains being made in industrial and healthcare stocks, Ini. Now, Unilever was down more than 3% earlier today, and L'Oreal was also down nearly 2%, but it's been the opposite story for industrial stocks, which are gaining, and they're being mostly led by defense firms, and German defense firm Rheinmetall is actually up more than 2%. Now, Ini, the defense sector has been especially sensitive to the news on Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine, with, of course, Washington trying to broker a ceasefire. But apart from that, of course, European investors are also being cautious ahead of the much-awaited U.S. Fed Reserve monetary policy meeting on Wednesday this week.
Yeah, talking about that policy meeting, everybody's waiting, but I guess it will just be a confirmation of the expectations of a 25 basis point cuts on Wednesday, and then we'll see what the markets would do after that, Chip. But there's also this the issue of trade still on the front burner, and I learned your foreign minister started his visit to China, and it's all looking for fair and rules-based trade.
Yeah, that is, of course, something that will also be watched very closely here. And in terms of the German Foreign Minister, Johann Wadephul, he has already said that Germany wants to maintain and expand its trade relationship with China. Now, Wadephul also noted that China is the leading trading partner of Germany, but we do know, Ini, that economic relations between the two countries have soured in recent years, and this is why this is such an important trip. And it was originally planned for October, but it was cancelled at short notice by the German foreign minister, and that is because Wadephul had not been able to schedule talks with enough high-ranking people in China, according to political insiders here in Berlin. And they've been saying that Wadephul made relations with China even frostier after denouncing what he called China's increasingly aggressive behavior in the Taiwan Strait. So there is a lot riding on this trip, and both Chinese and German officials will have a lot of ground to cover given their current areas of disagreement.
Yeah, I mean, using such strong words, aggressive, from coming from China. I wonder how this will go. But what's the expectation at the end of the day, going round China with all of these meetings?
Well, the expectation is, of course, the topics that they will discuss, and the big one is really rare earths. Now, since last April, when Beijing actually announced export controls on rare earths, European manufacturers have been struggling to get access to critical materials. And the foreign minister told a German broadcaster earlier today that Beijing is still far away from lifting those export restrictions. Now, German businesses are extremely dependent on China for the supply of rare earths, and German industry has already warned that a lack of reliable access to critical materials could affect production. But rare earths, are not the only topic. Last month, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz told DW in an interview that China can increase pressure on Russia to end the war in Ukraine. So that is something that will be discussed during the foreign minister's visit to China as well. Now, he is also in Beijing to lay the groundwork for Chancellor Merz's inaugural visit to China early next year. But it is unlikely that Waterpool will be getting Beijing to budge on anything. It generally doesn't want to interfere in matters involving other countries, so we can't expect it to interfere with with Russia's war in Ukraine. And right now, it also has more leverage than Berlin with its export controls. So it's highly unlikely that Berlin will be getting anything of what it really wants from China at this point.
Yeah, well, I guess it's going to be a very busy period for Mr. Waterpole, but we do hope he can prioritize, even though you do said he doesn't want to get involved. Ending the war in Ukraine, that would be a whole lot of relief for the whole world. So we hope he can do that, but we wish him the very best and hope he comes back with great news.
Yeah, let's watch and see what he does come back with, Ini.
All right, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Likewise.
Now let's head to the crypto space and see the stories making the headlines right there. Right after we see that BTC is at $91,873.38 after it's gained in the last about 24 hours, almost 2.5%. I believe this market is also factoring in that meeting on Wednesday of the Fed with the expectation of a 25 basis points cut on interest rates in the United States. Ethereum has gone up back to 3,000 level, but of course, we know it's far away from the 4,000. But I mean, perhaps this is a trend. Santa will come to the Bitcoin market or to the crypto market, hopefully very soon, in a couple of days before Christmas. XRP is also positive, Solana, Cardano. So we have more greens this morning, but it's a beautiful Christmas color. The red and the green making that. Oh, but let's see stories making the headlines there. We start from Canada, where the Securities and Exchange Commission Chair, Paul Atkins, has formally aligned the agency's mission with the digital asset revolution, declaring tokenization as the critical alpha required to modernize America's aging capital market infrastructure. I wonder how that would look like. And of course, once America does something and is successful, other countries. In a definitive signal to Wall Street, Atkins outlined the next phase of Project Crypto, as what they called a comprehensive regulatory overhaul designed to integrate blockchain rails into the federal security system. And then in Canada, sorry, that was in the United States. Now in Canada, the Revenue Agency has recovered over $100 million in unpaid cryptocurrency taxes from audits over the past 3 years, highlighting significant non-compliance among crypto traders in Canada. Imagine recovering $100 million. So this is taxes that can be made from crypto, even here in Nigeria. And Coinbase has launched crypto trading in India. Everybody is keying in. Coinbase launches crypto trading in India. Return to India after 2 years hiatus, enabling crypto-to-crypto trading for users following few registration. So these are the stories at the top on the minds of crypto traders. And that's it on Business Incorporated. Thank you so much for being a part of it. It's a new week. We still have a whole lot to discuss with you, so please stay here with us on channels Television for Business Morning and Business Incorporated. I'm Minnie John Meko. I'll see you for the closing markets, closing numbers at 10 p.m. Bye-bye.